Welcome to Bright Ideas, the podcast for leaders building companies and cultures that scale. I'm your host, Desiree B. Sharpe, keynote speaker and CEO of Savix, the AI-powered subscription management platform for small business. If you're ready for unfiltered insights and strategies for building empowered teams and resilient businesses, you're in the right place. This is Bright Ideas, where leadership gets personal. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Bright Ideas podcast and Happy New Year. Are you guys tired of hearing that yet? Are we at the point in the month when people don't say Happy New Year anymore? Well, this is my first solo episode of 2026, so I'm going to still say Happy New Year because I'm very excited for the fresh new energy of a new year. I really can't believe that 2025 has already ended. Can't say that I'm super sad about that, but I am still in disbelief that we're already 3 weeks into a new year. You probably have noticed that I'm a little bit nasally today. No surprise there because I'm always getting some sort of bug that my daughter has, my toddler daughter. So please bear with me. But I have a lot of goodies to share in this episode. So whether you're just joining the Bright Ideas community or you're a day one listener who's been with us since we launched the platform last year, I'm so grateful that you've chosen to spend some time with me and to support this space that we're building to highlight forward-thinking founders and leaders who are building impactful businesses and resilient teams. So if this is your first time hearing my voice, my nasally voice, my name is Desiree B. Sharpe. I'm the founder of Savix, an AI-powered subscription management platform for small businesses, launching later this year. Very excited about that. I'm also the host of the Bright Ideas podcast and a keynote speaker. I previously owned a people and culture consulting firm that partnered with brands including the Coca-Cola Company, Interpublic Group, and many of its subsidiary brands before making a big pivot into the fintech space. I also have a corporate background in communications and talent management. And I'm also an alumna of Spelman College. So shout out to all the HBCU alum and especially the Spelman College girlies if you are listening to this episode. I've been a full-time business owner since I was 26 years old. And I am deeply, deeply passionate about supporting women in business, working mothers, and small businesses. And you'll hear me talk about a lot of those things because I am a woman in business. I am a working mom. I do have a small business. So those topics are near and dear to my heart. And I'm always keeping my finger on the pulse of what the latest trends are as it relates to those spaces. If you are interested, though, in hearing a little bit more about me and my journey, I encourage you to listen to the very first episode of this podcast, which gives a very real and raw breakdown of the personal and professional experiences that led me here to starting this podcast, a little bit more about how my 2025 went, and maybe even some more. I kind of forgot what I talked about in that episode, but I know that it's a good starting point. So feel free to check it out if you're interested. As a founder myself, I don't know about you, but I am still feeling the whiplash from all the change and disruption of 2025. But I am cautiously optimistic about the new opportunities and possibilities for this year. Now, I use the words cautiously optimistic because this time last year, I expected to build on the momentum of 2024, and I set very ambitious goals for myself. And the truth is, I didn't achieve a single goal I set for 2025. I had big plans for growing my business, but instead, I ended up having to close my business. I also became a mom. And I probably should have mentioned that first instead of framing it as a footnote, because that was by far the biggest change I experienced, not only last year, but in my entire life. So this year, I'm taking a different approach.
I'm still doing the work to get my newest venture, Savix, off the ground, but I'm removing the rigidity from my goal setting practices and giving God more room to move in my life. I'm not taking this new approach just because it sounds like the right thing to do, even though it is. I'm doing it because relinquishing control over key aspects of my life, arguably every aspect of my life, has become essential to preserving my mental and emotional health. So that's how I'm moving in 2026. I'm continuing to move by faith, walking in blind faith, and allowing God to order my footsteps. However, on another note, based on some of the conversations I'm seeing online, many small business owners are hopeful about growth in their businesses this year. I'm seeing that many of them are aggressively building cash reserves because the economy is still pretty uncertain. There's a lot of active negotiations, specifically around renegotiating contract terms with clients and vendors, and big investments in technology to help combat the impact of inflation. I see small business owners making smarter investments, particularly by doubling down on innovation, marketing, and technology so that they can move faster and more efficiently in their businesses. But specifically amongst micro businesses and solopreneurs, I know that we have a mix of leaders representing SMBs, startups, small businesses of all sizes, but specifically for the smaller micros, I'm seeing rapid adoption of digital tools to just keep operations lean and agile. I mean, this was obviously a trend that started last year when AI really took off. AI had been around for a while, but people really started to pay attention to it last year. And so that continues to be a trend into this year, which is also very smart. This was actually one of the trends that validated the need for my new platform, Savix, which helps small businesses manage their SaaS spending. Initially, I thought that this would be a key challenge primarily for larger SMBs, but micro businesses are actually just as susceptible to expense creep through subscriptions as larger SMBs. The market has become extremely overcrowded with new AI tools that may or may not add real value. And without oversight into what tools you're using, how much they're costing your business, the ROI they're delivering, and whether you're getting the best deal, SaaS creep can quietly become an expensive problem that eventually erodes your bottom line. So, I expect generative AI to continue to cause big disruptions in the US economy, affecting businesses large and small. And I look forward to keeping a close eye on how things evolve in the SMB landscape and sharing my take on what we can do as small business leaders to get and stay ahead. In other news, I have some updates on what you can expect from the Bright Ideas podcast this year. When we launched the Bright Ideas podcast on July 29th of 2025, our intention was to publish on a bi-weekly schedule. But as the podcast gained traction and our listenership grew pretty organically, we started publishing bonus episodes, which unintentionally put us on what felt like a weekly publishing schedule, especially toward the end of Q4. So if you were listening to the podcast, consistently on a weekly basis, or you go back through the library of episodes, you'll see that we had a lot of content and a lot of guests. On the upside, we now have 19 published episodes and have highlighted 22 leaders on the Bright Ideas platform, which has helped us grow organically month over month. But with any growth, challenges naturally followed. So it started to feel like we had slowly evolved into a content factory, and it became harder to prioritize the depth and quality of each conversation. It also became more difficult for me to carve out the time that I needed to properly research for my solo episodes to make sure that they were relevant, timely, and valuable to you. We also ran into challenges with giving each guest episode the promotion it truly deserved because episodes were coming out so quickly. So in 2026, we are going back to our roots. Bright Ideas is returning to the podcast it was always meant to be, and we'll be moving back to a true biweekly schedule with one guest interview and one solo Bright Bite episode per month. Again, if you're new to Bright Ideas, our Bright Bite episodes are my solo episodes where I share trends that are relevant to small business, interesting things I'm seeing in the economy, leadership trends, philosophies that I find interesting, random tips, or you might just hear me blab about my life as a mom, a wife, and a business owner just trying to figure it out. But this is really my solo time with you each month. So we'll have one guest interview and then we'll have one Bright Bite per month. There may be some special bonus episodes here and there if there's a timely announcement that I need to make, but our priority is going to be quality over quantity. I really want to focus on going deeper with the leaders we feature on this podcast, really just digging into their leadership philosophies, the challenges they've had to overcome, the lessons they've learned in life and business, and how they're building resilient teams and companies in a constantly changing market. If you or someone you know is a small business owner with an interesting mission or story to share, please feel free to send me a pitch. I welcome it. I personally review every submission to determine if it's a good mutual fit for the show. So if you're interested in sending me a pitch to be a guest on the show or you know someone who could be a great fit, please email me at Desiree, Desiree, at ZJ Ventures. That's Z as in zebra, J Ventures.co. We'll also drop that email in the show notes for this episode. Please note before you reach out that we are currently booked through April of 2026, but I'd be happy to consider pitches for mid to late Q2. I also want to briefly share a few reflections from winter break, not to keep us stuck in 2025, because I know most of us are ready just to leave 2025 behind. But so many of those insights are shaping how I'm approaching 2026. I felt a lot of anxiety at the beginning of December because it was my first holiday season carrying the titles of mom, wife, and business owner all at the same time. And I realized just how much pressure mothers carry in creating the memories that we associate with the holidays. It's a beautiful time. It's actually my favorite time of year, but it's also a significant amount of pressure, especially if you're like me and your pre-mom identity has not quite caught up with what you actually have the capacity to do in this season of life. It was just a really odd, surprising, exhausting experience for me because up until this year or last year, I was used to someone still creating that environment for me, even, because we didn't have a child. We could go to other people's houses, my mom, my in-laws, and they were pros at Christmas and at Thanksgiving and all the things. And so now that this was my first year of having to take on not the full burden because we still visited our in-laws for Christmas, but a piece of that burden, I think that my respect for mothers who do this year over year, especially for large families, has gone up significantly. On top of that, my husband, my daughter, and I all have birthdays around the holidays. My husband's birthday is December 2nd. My daughter's is December 20th, and mine is January 6th. I was anxious about how I would be able to show up for my family, given how over-leveraged and under-resourced I felt pretty much all year. But it was important for me to do the best that I could after everything that my husband and I had been through in our first year as parents. I felt that we all deserved to be celebrated. My husband and I for overcoming so many hurdles, and my daughter for, celebrating her first year of life. So we had lunch on my husband's actual birthday, and I planned a surprise brunch with his closest friends, many of whom also have babies, and it was a blast. For my daughter's birthday, we hosted a one happy camper themed first birthday party at our home, complete with camp style finger foods and a s'mores station and a small group of our closest friends. By the time my birthday rolled around, I was just completely tapped out and I wanted to spend the day by myself. So that's exactly what I did. I had a relaxing spa day, a quick lunch with my friend, and I did some solo shopping. And to be honest, it felt really good to move slowly on my own time without doing anything that required brain power. It was just the perfect way to spend my birthday. Throughout December, there were many moments when I found myself just super emotional. I'm not the most emotional person, but since becoming a mom, I am like very emotional. And I was just emotional reflecting on all the challenges that we overcame, me and my husband together last year. It was just a really hard year. And I was proud of myself for having the courage and resilience to keep getting back up after being knocked down so many times. And I've never been more grateful for life, for my faith, my family, and the community that carried me through the hardest year of my life. This year, I'm continuing a habit that I started, and that's leaning deeply into human to human connection. Last year, I slid into a lot of DMs on LinkedIn to invite leaders onto the podcast and to simply connect with people I found interesting. But what surprised me the most was how willing people were to engage. Many of those conversations ended up moving offline into coffee meetups and lunches filled with laughter, stories, and just good, genuine connection. And those experiences reminded me how much I've missed the old way of networking. So even with a packed schedule, and a tiny toddler to chase after, I am committing to making space each month for virtual chats, coffee meetups, and being intentional about helping people however I can. The older I get, the more I realize how important generosity is. Generosity when it comes to your time, your knowledge, and your resources. There were so many people who shared encouragement, offered advice, and made introductions for me last year. And those random acts of kindness inspired me to continue being someone who follows through, who keeps their word, and shows up for others when it matters most. Earlier in this episode, I shared that 2025 was a year of remarkable loss, but it was also a year of remarkable gains. I founded a fintech startup and designed a pilot program as a non technical founder. I was accepted into my first accelerator as a pre revenue tech founder, which is not very common. I built a brand that attracted an incredible founding engineer to my startup. And I launched the Bright Ideas podcast, which has helped me grow significantly as a speaker, connector, and strategist. None of that would have been possible without my community of advisors, colleagues, and friends. So I'll leave you with this. How can you be a little more generous this year? Can you give 15 minutes of your time to offer feedback on someone's idea? Can you take 10 minutes to make an introduction? Do you have the financial resources to support a cause you care about? 2025 has taught me that we have to look out for one another. Even when we're all treading water, just trying to stay afloat, it's important to pause and pour into other people. Now, I'm going to hop off my soapbox because I've just kind of been on a rant. And there were a few other topics on my agenda for this conversation today, for this Bright Bite, but this feels like a good place to stop. I want to stop leaving you with that one inflection point on how you can be a little more generous in 2026. So thank you for being here, for listening, and for continuing to support Bright Ideas. I'm so excited for what this year has in store, and I hope this podcast continues to be a source of inspiration, clarity, and encouragement as you move forward in your leadership journey. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's Bright Bite. If today's message hit close to home, if it felt like I was putting words to something you've been carrying or working through, that's exactly the heart of my signature keynote, Leading Through Life Seasons. It's designed for leaders and teams navigating growth, change, or those seasons when everything feels like a lot all at once. If you're hosting a team retreat, offsite, or company event and want to bring this conversation into the room, visit DesireeBSharpe.com to book me to speak. Until next time, be bold, be resilient, be sharp. I'm Desiree B. Sharpe.